Yep. So this is Moma from the RVF forum, and we've got
Rude boy.
yes. So we're just a couple of black men that are going to talk about certain issues and certain obstacles or perceived obstacles in the game mindset. You care to elaborate on the theme that we're addressing this afternoon, Rude Boy?
Yeah, basically, this has come about. Moma and myself, we've been talking for some time now. We met via the Roosh V forum. Shout out to that. And we just want to address this one particular thread in regards to places a black man should go to travel to have better success with the ladies. Unfortunately, the thread started off well, but then some people came and sabotaged it and had their, of course, it ventured off into different directions. So we want to address some of those topics. But I guess first of all, Moma, if you can, yeah, tell us a bit about yourself, your background, all that good stuff, and then I'll introduce myself, and we can take it from there. Go ahead.
Okay, definitely. So I'm Moma, and I'm now living in my fourth country, third continent. I have trouble tracking exactly my route and so forth, but I grew up in London, England. I've always lived in London, England. That's where I've been raised. That's where my cultural overlook on things has come from. And then I moved to Toronto, Canada. I stayed there for quite a while, so I understand Toronto, Canada very well. And during the time that I lived in Toronto, Canada, I traveled to different places. And I eventually got tired and I moved down south into the United States. So I lived in Miami for a bit and I no longer live in Miami. But during that time, I felt the need to acquire game tools, game mindset tools, and I've used them in pretty much the places that I've lived, and I can definitely offer an insight into that. Rude Boy, what about yourself?
Similar background to yourself, born in London, England, UK. I think I'm currently in my mid 40s, so I think I've got about a decade on you. At a young age, migrated to Canada with the family. So Toronto now is home, or Toronto suburb is now home. And 2006, I actually ventured back to the UK to, start all over again. I was there for about 5 years and had the fortune to be able to travel across Europe. As we know, Ryanair, EasyJet, God bless them, cheap airfare. And yeah, it was, I'll talk about some of those experiences later on, but of course, my background, my parents are from the Caribbean. And yeah, consider myself, I guess, a man of the world, international man of mystery. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself. Anyways, over to you, Moma.
Okay, so I'm of Nigerian descent. I lived in Nigeria for a bit, but I was young when I lived there, so I can't really bring that mindset or that flavor over. I definitely understand the Nigerian culture. It's the only African country I've ever been to or lived in, but very familiar with the mindset, with the outlook on things. But I grew up in a Jamaican part of London, so I'm also very familiar with the Jamaican culture outlook. A lot of my friends were of Jamaican parentage, so I've had the opportunity to observe them in action, especially when it came to games. So that being said, it means that games really not a new concept for me. I have had to adjust it living in North America, but the whole aspect, the whole just approaching and just having a certain inner belief that's been set just me growing up in those in that particular area from an early stage. So That kind of.
Sorry, Moma, just sort of get more of a definition from you. You mentioned mindset in terms of a Nigerian, Jamaican mindset. What do you think that mindset is when it comes to, say, game, dating women, the general belief? How would you define that?
Well, I've observed a lot of, West Indians, Jamaicans in particular, which I still feel that they lead the charge in terms of game, and regardless of their looks, regardless of their monetary or their personal values, I've always found that they've always had a very confident approach in things. They've complexion, size, height really doesn't matter, and they'll open anywhere. So I've always found that, and it actually, me seeing that, saw that it expands the borders of where one can actually open. Like when I say open, start talking to an individual of the female gender. Sometimes we limit ourselves to only talking to women in club settings, in social settings where there may be alcohol or so on and so forth, where there seems to be an established norm in talking to them. But I've witnessed Jamaican guys talking to, it could be a traffic warden while we're in the car and she's gonna give you a ticket. You start sweet talking her. It could be a police officer. They're that brave. It could be the woman who came around to check for your TV license. In the UK, you have to pay for your TV license. You don't, you have to be licensed to have the TV. So the point I'm making is that it could be anywhere. So me seeing that and constantly seeing that interaction has actually given me insight to a certain way of doing things. Nigerians, in my observation, they don't approach with that same scope, and a lot of them that I've seen will leverage the I'd say the money game. So they would leverage that in my observation. Obviously it's not all of them that do it, but that seems to be more of the culture thing, to kind of leverage the money game and so forth, and they're not as widespread as the Jamaican guys that I've grown up with.
Mm.
Earlier growing up, I wasn't always able to distinguish if the person was not Jamaican. They may have been from St. Vincent, they may have been from Grenada, and my ear was not tuned in to actually observe the differences into that. I met a classmate of mine. For years, I thought he was Jamaican, but I actually bounced into him in Trinidad, and he said he was there for his nan's funeral. So I was like, "Whoa! I didn't even know you were Trini. Like all these years we went to school, I actually thought you were Jamaican." So that's the point there. But that's the outlook, and that's the experiences that I've had, and that's the kind of culture that I've been around, and this is why I say it clicked pretty early. And road game was always a big thing in London. Rude boy, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, obviously similar backgrounds. Unfortunately, I guess with me, my dad is Jamaican. He has that very, outgoing personality, which doesn't really come natural for me. But like I said, growing up in London, I find the difference between maybe UK and Canada. I'll say I won't speak in America, but at a young age, guys are, actively gaming. Uh, at least when I grew up, guys were actually gaming girls at a very young age. So, for example, I went to a high school. I just started high school, or they call it secondary school in the UK. I was just before I moved to Canada. I was 12, 13. And after school, we used to take the bus home. Bus being one of those double decker buses, and all the boys used to go upstairs and sit on all the seats. So basically, they would, say, for example, if myself and a friend were on the bus, he would sit in front, I would sit in behind him. So, and reason why they did that, they passed all girls secondary school on the way home, and the girls used to get on the bus. So when, of course, they rushed upstairs, the girls would have to sit beside a guy. There was no empty seats for two of them to sit side by side. So, this is at age 13, whereas if I look at kids today, age 13, 14, or maybe 15, not many of them are have that sort of mindset. It could be a generation thing, it could be a culture thing, it could be whatever, but shows you the difference. So when you learn that from an early age, I think that can shape you. Um, yeah, I mean, sorry, I was off track here looking at my notes, but yeah, I mean, that's a general mindset. I mean, yeah, I guess,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So, if I may ask, what's your current, I mean, based off that background, sounds like you've had very similar foundation to myself growing up in London as well, which is a main hub. One of the fashion capitals of the world.
Yeah.
When I speak to Americans and they try and ask me, what things are like, I always tell them that London is very similar to New York. I went to New York. We're now in 2015. I went during the summer of 2013, and I was in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn was very, very similar to where I grew up in London. The transition, if I was to transition from London to New York, the learning curve would be so low. I'd get into the swing of things very, very quickly. I stayed with some individuals that were actually expats from the UK. So the whole household was filled with Londoners, pretty much. They're all female as well. So, would get a cup of, you fancy a cup of tea? So it was just like, I was just in my element. So that's the point that I'm making. But what I would like to ask you is that with that background, what is your current mindset? What are your current strategies in terms of game and approach right now? What mindset do you take when you go out? What strategies do you use? Do you favor heavily on online dating, or do you like to implement road game, or does club game play a big part in what you do?
Okay. Yeah, so I guess to continue, when I moved to Canada, lived in a predominantly white area. I guess I went through the so-called growing up teenage years, a few beta tendencies that seem to be strong. I'm going to say they're actually stronger, I feel, in North America. There's a lot of brainwashing media, a lot of stupid movies, is it like The Notebook and all that garbage, and, stuff empowering women and all that kind of stuff. But I guess when I was growing up, it was a lot better. There was no smartphone technology. If you met a girl, you got her home phone number, you called, you talked to her on the phone for 2 hours, and it's more innocent then as compared to the times that we lived in. Fast forward now, and to answer your questions, I've been fortunate. I guess I've had some relationships where I've dated decent girls, and I don't really like dating. I know dating is part of the norm, and you have to date 100 girls to find five good ones and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of online dating, I know it's very popular. I've tried it. I don't like it. I don't think it works for a black person or a black male. I don't care what site you use, POF, Tinder, OkCupid. I find whether it's, I'm sure, and I hear the same results in Ottawa. I have friends in Ottawa or Toronto or even parts of the US where the kind of women that I find on online dating aren't the kind of women I would necessarily approach on the street. A lot of single mothers, women that are over 35, women that are fat, women that have more than one kids, and generally that's not the type of woman that I want, or I tend to try and stay clear of them. I'm fortunate enough where I can interact with women outside of that parameters. So for me, online dating is pretty minimal. In fact, I don't engage in it. My mindset is basically to be the best that I can be. I can't worry about the next man or what he looks like or what he doesn't look like. Or, I buy, the best clothing that I can afford. I have a car that's paid off for. It's a nice car. I'm always working out. So I have to me, I can't afford to slip up. So there's an expression called kaizen. Kaizen means is a Japanese expression, means always improving, and I'm always improving. If I go to the gym, if I bench this or do that one day, the next day I have to, be better than that. I have to be better than the next man. So that is my mindset. It's very positive, never negative. I don't, if things go badly, I blame myself. I try not to overanalyze. And yeah, I realize, we both realize the game as a black man is not fair. Maybe the playing field in North America, that is not in our favor, but that doesn't bother me because there's several countries. I mean, for example, Europe, I think the playing field is in our favor. And I encourage any black person in North America, black male or female, to go and explore different channels. We have people that black males on the forum that are, they've been to China. We've had people that have been to South America, and these are places that eventually, hopefully, one day I will touch down on. But the travel aspect, we'll talk about that later on. So yeah,
Okay, okay, that's great, and
yeah,
I do agree with what you're saying. I definitely share the same philosophy as yourself, especially when it comes to personal improvement and so on and so forth. Maybe that stems from not being of the younger generation and not being of a microwave culture that some people like to call it, expecting everything now. So it's an organic build up. I agree with you in terms of online dating. I tried it in Toronto. I leveraged a little heavily on it at times just due to laziness, and the yield was pretty poor. There was a lot of overweight women, very entitled, and I like my lizards. I like them with some body to them. I've dated a slim woman and I really didn't enjoy it. I just like a little something to it, but it doesn't mean that I want blobs. And we're talking, there was a lot of overweight women that were also older, with kids, so they had all the negatives against them, and yet they were demanding, top-notch material, and I found that ludicrous, and that just led to show what type of market there was. I've tried Badoo recently here in the US, and I get zero hits on white women. Zero, zero. If I get any hits on them, it's gonna be a robot or what they call bots. Not my preference is black women, but you know,
sorry, Momo. Two things.
yeah.
I gotta cut you there. What is a robot? And also, too, can you explain to people listening, lizard, where that came from? It's such a great term. I think you have to go and explain it further.
Lizard will be for the second
Said
podcast.
okay, all right,
But
okay, okay,
but
robots.
yes,
Okay,
but the bots are,
yeah,
I
the
think they're
bots.
people that design applications and so forth and create profiles on them. So once you click on them, they will send packaged responses that will lead you to their website. Maybe it's pornographic,
Oh,
and they'll,
spam.
yeah, stuff like that to market their nonsense. So the white women that make the hits
Yeah,
for myself on
yeah.
Badoo and other members, black members will speak to that. I think Speak Easy was talking about that. Do get the same results. Now, me mentioning this stuff, also, I want to tie into something. You should not use your results from the online dating to determine how non-black women or even black women will view you in person. There's a lot of cowardice and so on and so forth with the online dating, and you really don't get your best yield anyway as a man, whether you're good looking, whether you fit the stereotypical, and I'm doing air quotes right now because a lot of people say if you're tall, white, blonde with blue eyes, you're at the top of the food chain or whatever you want to call it, which I don't necessarily agree with, but so be it. If it is, I'm kind of like yourself. I don't really look at others, I only look at myself. But regardless of what you look like, you should not use online dating as a measuring stick on how you would do in public. In public, body language, charisma, humor, all these things play into part. When you use online dating, all she's doing is looking at your picture over and over again and creating all sorts of nonsense in it. So I do agree with you. It's a good thing really not to use online dating. Really use it if you're at home or stuck at work and you're just flicking and clicking and so forth. But don't let that take up more than 20% of what I'd like to say your hunting time. So no to online dating. So you also mentioned that the market is tough in North America. I mean, I guess it is. Not from North America, though I live here now. So I've been raised differently, such as yourself. So sometimes I'm a little insensitive when I hear others complain about how tough it is because my mindset is different. My eyes, I see in a different spectrum. I don't limit myself in that sense. And if I hear someone trying to pigeonhole me or limit me, I really don't see what they're seeing. But that's because I didn't grow up here. So, but
Yeah, and basically what you're saying is you haven't been brainwashed, and I think I'm sorry to say there are a lot of guys, particularly guys that I know in person and guys on the forum that I think are heavily brainwashed. They spent too much time in America. They watched too much TV, and let's be honest, let's call a spade a spade. Um, TV media does not is not there to make us look good, right? I was online today and I was looking at what was it some commercial, Old Spice commercial now with Terry Crews, and Terry Crews, the guy, the muscular black guy, so he's like a B-list actor from the Expendables. Terry Crews,
I know him.
TRE.
I know him. He used to he played in the NFL for
Played in the
4 years.
NFL.
He's swole. He's swole, and
He's swole,
he
great
does.
body.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I
And
know
they have
him.
yeah, yeah, and they have this guy now wearing dressing up as a woman. He's there was another picture there. He's wearing a bra, and I mean it's the effeminization of the black male. But that's a deeper stuff. We'll touch on that and on later down the road. But you have to travel as a black male American. You have to get a passport and go to Europe, and the playing field is bigger, and the opportunities there are just endless. So,
Or
um,
even go to, I mean, you don't have to necessarily make the Europe trip
yes,
if the
yeah,
time if time is a limitation. Those of you who live on the west coast, try Mexico, try
yeah,
what's it, what is
Caribbean,
it,
right? Too,
Nicaragua, try the Caribbean. The
yeah,
Caribbean, there's a lot of islands in the Caribbean that
yeah,
speak English because those are former English colonies, and they're going to have this. They're going to have the English mindset. So all
yeah.
that, especially as a black male, you're going to go to a country for once where it's pretty much governed and run by black people. So all that race issue that you may feel is a hindrance will no longer be a hindrance when you're there. So make the trip. Like to fly to Jamaica from where I'm at is under $300,
Exactly.
and your US dollar will stretch. Or go to Trinidad, or
Yeah.
go to St. Kitts, go to which other places?
Oh, there's
Grenada.
many.
There's so many. There's so many. Go
Yeah.
to them. So give those a shot. I mean, Rude Boys, yourself, you're a very traveled person. You've been doing it for a while. Do you care to list some of your travel destinations and the warm or different experiences you've had in terms of from a game standpoint, and what's helped you to realize that the North American mindset of a black male is not the best mindset to happen? Do you care to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'll try and make this short because I've been fortunate. Traveling is my addiction. If I try and hit a new country every year. When I lived in the UK, I was traveling every month. I had a girlfriend that lived in the Czech Republic. She lived in a little village, and um, we used to walk around the village, and I was the only black person, I'm sure, for 100 miles. But she was proud. She felt proud to be holding my hand in this village, and that was one experience. After that, I dated a girl in London who was from Hungary. That was pretty serious. Almost married her, but for whatever reason, I guess I got the cold feet and jumped out of that. But for me, what all started was probably about 20 years ago. I did a solo run, my first solo trip, and I went to the Greek islands. I was in the UK at the time on holiday, and I just booked a ticket spur of the moment, £100 return. Flew to the island of Rhodes, Rhodos, I think it's the furthest east Greek island. I went there, landed on the island, and there were some guys there, with signs, room for rent. First guy went, let's go, jumped in his car and rented a room. I had a scooter and toured the island. It's one of those, the Greek islands is a heavy European summer destination. So at the time, there were a lot of Scandinavian girls or Scandinavian people, and a lot of British girls. And I remember one night I went into a bar. I was sitting at the bar by myself on a stool, and this English girl was beside me. And some guy was trying to talk to her, and then she just literally put her arm around me and said, "Oh, I'm with this guy." And I don't have to explain where that went. That's a layup, right? And um, I got bored. I got bored of that island, so after I jumped on a hovercraft, headed over to this other island called Kos, Kos. And again, this is 20 years ago, so this is a long time ago. To go over to those places, that was a big trip then. And I don't know many guys myself who have done that trip. But anyways, I went over to this island, Kos, Kos. First night I was there, I was walking around. These two girls from Switzerland, they came up to me, started giggling. I guess MTV was the big thing back then, and they started talking about Snoop Doggy Dogg and all this kind of stuff, all the stereotypical MTV stuff. And then they said, "Oh, am I Big George from London?" So I thought that time I wasn't working out. I wasn't big. My name's not George, but I was from London, and I laughed and I gave them some beta response about, "Oh, you girls are so cute. You're so beautiful." They took off. So then that obviously charged me. I became, all invigorated and all that kind of stuff. So for the next 3 days, I tried to find these girls. I think I bumped into them in the nightclub and talked to them briefly. They took off. They were just sort of giggling and all this kind of stuff. So on the very last night, as the gods were smiling on me, I was sitting in front of the same nightclub, and these two girls came out and they saw me and they ran over to me. I was sitting on a wall. I was sitting on this like a seawall, and the ocean was behind me. And they sat in my lap, and I felt like I felt like $1 million. And then basically walked them back to where they were staying. They were renting a little home or cottage, whatever. And that was my first and only threesome. So
You that?
so I think what happened there, that just opened the doors. I mean, I think the travel bug hit me hard. Again, I didn't, what could I say? I wasn't big muscles. I wasn't in, great shape or whatever. I was just a regular guy. And yeah, that opened my eyes, the whole new world. And I was in Croatia based on what I read on the forum. I spent a weekend in Croatia with Roosh. Great weekend there. I didn't, no flag was captured, but that was due to my logistics and probably being tired. And but again, I look in the mirror and I blame myself for that. So no big deal. Croatia was a fun time. I did that. That was a solo flex. I also went to Iceland in 2011 twice. Solo flex, right? I have a friend there now, but I met him there, and of course, I was able to experience, the Iceland woman. I was in a nightclub, and some lady stuck her finger up my behind, and when I turned around, it was a tall blonde, and she was smiling in my face and saying basically I was standing in her way. So I mean, those things. It just opens your eyes to a whole different world perspective, and then when you come back to Canada and America, you just see it for what it is. It's like, hey, they don't like me here. I mean, right now in America, they're shooting black people like they're shooting dogs. So I mean, like, what are you gonna say? Like,
Boy, I don't even know. I don't. I try not to. I try not to keep take that in mind. I try and remember why I came to America, because it's one of those where almost I feign an ignorance to what's going on, because it's not pretty at all when you really look at it, frankly. But I just try and remember why I've come, and so on and so forth. Did you find that during your travel was language ever a barrier? Because some of the countries you've mentioned, I'm not sure if English, or do you speak any other languages, or is English your sole language of communication?
Uh, well, obviously, I mean, I think it never really seemed to be a bit of a problem. I think a lot of the younger generation in these countries, for example, Croatia, a lot of the people we met spoke English, spoke pretty good English, I will say that. I've been to Scandinavia, that's one of my favorite destinations. Sweden 4 times, Iceland twice, Norway, Denmark, and they all speak English, probably better English than we do. So it wasn't a problem. And then I think also too in Greece, met one or two girls whose English wasn't the greatest, but they made the effort to talk to me. You know, they wanted to be understood. I think when I went to the DR, I found DR's in Dominican Republic. I met some girl, and the English wasn't the greatest. Obviously, my Spanish wasn't the greatest either. So we had, it was a bit frustrating and stuff like that. But these are obstacles. I think the main thing is when you travel, people treat you different. And for example, I was in Croatia in a nightclub, and a man stopped me. This is a grown man, and he said, black man is number one. And I was like, no, no. I said, I played it off. And, said he was serious. And when I was in Greece 20 years ago, this is a Greek island, and these kids were in a car and they were playing Bob Marley, right? And they said Bob Marley's number one. I mean, you were talking Jamaican, culture. And this is in Greece, and these teenage kids are playing Bob Marley. I think in Croatia, I met some teenage boys. They wanted to, hang with me and walk me with me, and they were delighted that I was in their country. They wanted to know all about me and stuff like that. So it's just little experiences like that. Um, at the same time in Greece, that was just such a phenomenal trip because I rented a scooter one night, and um, the scooter ran out of gas petrol, and older gentleman pulled up in his Mercedes, and he, came to assist me, and he said, "Oh, the bike needs gas." So got in his car, went back to his house, and he went and I guess he had a gas tank there, and it was about 10:30 at night, and his whole family, they were eating dinner outside, sort of the European Mediterranean style. They were eating big long table, grandmother, kids, wife, and everybody, and there was an empty plate. And he looked at me and he said, "There's an empty plate. Do you care to sit down and join us for dinner?" And I was just like, I think I was just maybe a bit shy, a bit embarrassed, but the hospitality was like, wow, incredible. And then, we went and got the gas tank. He filled up my bike, and I was good to go. He shook my hand and he said, "Yeah, enjoy your time here." And, just, you compare that hospitality. He didn't look at me as, a black man or anything like that. I was just a person that I was a human being, right? I was an individual. So, I mean, I don't prejudge people. I mean, I know some people say these people are this, these people are that. You can't go there, you can't go there. I just think the only obstacles out there is the obstacles that you put in your head, right?
Yeah, I agree with you totally. My concept, I just feel that North America has a lot of good developments, but in terms of social, relationships between different cultures, if you want to say different races, is not up to par with the other countries in Europe and so on and so forth. And maybe that has to do with the history, regardless, that is what it is, because some of the concepts or restrictions that I hear people say, it's like, are you serious? But I guess it's really a reality. I mean, the places that I've traveled to, I didn't really have the game mindset in that sense, that I wasn't approaching in that sense, because my style is more of a laid back style. I don't like to open up. I don't have that hunger where I'm opening up sets aggressively, like that's my sole purpose. I kind of let the situation take care of itself in the past. Now I'm being a little bit more proactive and recognizing triggers. But I've been to Paris. Paris was cool. I'd never been to France before, so Paris was okay. I couldn't speak I speak some French now. I couldn't speak any at the time, so I tried to open, but it was like, I was talking really, because I didn't have anything. I had no vocabulary. All I could say was La bibliothèque, which that makes no sense, the
Yeah,
library, and the pool, la piscine. That's all I could remember from French
yeah,
class. I couldn't even really remember how to say
sure.
what's your name. I could say my name is, but I couldn't even ask your name. I couldn't
Yeah,
figure it out, so I was useless there. But it was interesting. Paris was good. My friend who invited me to go there, he's from the ends, he's from the area, but he was fluent in French because he'd done an immersion. It was part of his uni course, his university course. So he was the guide for us, and it was good. So Paris was good. Didn't really open much. We did go out every night though, and they definitely dress very sexy there. They've got a very high sense of fashion in my observation. And I've also been to Amsterdam. Amsterdam was really good as well. I would probably rank it higher than Paris. I'd rank it higher than Paris because there's two countries in Europe which English is not their first language, but their English is so good that you really don't even know that they've actually got a second language. And those two countries are Denmark and the Netherlands, aka Holland.
yeah,
People speak excellent English in those countries. You will not come. They speak it where you can barely even hear an accent. You can't even hear an accent. So they were very welcoming in Amsterdam. So I liked Amsterdam. And again, as I said, these experiences just showed me that. You're treated differently when you travel. You see that you see the world from different lenses, and once you realize that life is not necessarily one way, you never see the same thing again. Your mind is open.
absolutely, absolutely. I've been to both too. Amsterdam was good experiences too there. But yeah, no, absolutely, I agree 100%. Right. So
Yeah, I also went to when I lived in Canada. I also came to Canada. I was hungry. I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna make this place work because I had made the active decision to leave to leave the United Kingdom, to leave London. So my mindset was probably a little bit different from the average person I met in Toronto. Maybe the first 6 months I was in Toronto, I was chatting to this lizard, and she covered my ticket to meet her in Winnipeg. And if you know where Winnipeg is, it's 2 hours flight from Toronto. So that's quite a journey. And one of the guys I was working with, a black guy, he heard me talking and confirming it on the phone. He's like, right here, Moma, you're going all that way there, and he kind of chuckled because it was it was a different concept to him, but him realizing I'm from the UK and so forth, he couldn't really place me in the same jar as he would a regular Torontonian. So I went to Winnipeg.
yeah, I'm sorry,
Winnipeg,
I'm gonna cut you one. I'm gonna cut you there. Sorry. Probably the reason why he acted like that is probably he's never been there. He's probably never been anywhere, and he probably just can't afford to go anywhere. So I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of haters, a lot of jealousy. But anyways, continue. Go ahead.
yeah, well, when people say that they can't afford things, I'm usually say that it falls because if you take a look at their finances and really look at what they spend their money on, they can, if you want something, you can have it. And a lot of them just don't they don't view it as a priority. When things
True,
become a
true, true.
priority, you can go because it's really not that much to fly to these places. I've seen people blow a lot of money in regular nightclubs in
Yeah,
whack cities.
yeah,
They
yeah,
might blow 1,000
yeah.
or
Bottle
for bottle
services.
service,
Yeah,
posturing, all that nonsense,
yeah,
with a bunch of white people. So to me, money's not necessarily the thing. It's just a mindset. It's a fear of the unknown, to be honest. And I'm one of those people. I go wherever it's at. But Winnipeg was great. I think Winnipeg is a very positive place for black people,
yeah.
black men. It works very much in a favor there.
And sorry, you said she sent you a ticket, a
Yes,
plane
she
ticket.
did. She covered it. She covered it. So I was like, yeah, I'll go. So
Okay.
I went there, met her, and took care of the business. And I received a very warm welcome there. Like for some reason, I don't know what it was, but I was not used to this because I was just fresh from the UK. In the UK,
Yeah.
we don't hype up people that way, but they were hyping me up like I was some kind of celebrity there. You know what I mean? Because I we go out. I went to a few Thai restaurants. They had quite a few Asian joints out there. So went to a few Thai restaurants, and the waitress was a nice Thai chick. If she was Thai or Vietnamese or Korean, I don't know, but she was pretty. And when my date was kind of not looking or something, she kind of leaned in closer and she said, "Oh, excuse me, you play professional sports?" And she kind of licked her lips in a way, and I was thinking to myself, is this for real or am I being pranked?
Yeah.
But that's how they treat black men there. But
Yep.
most people won't know because they stay within their locale.
Yeah.
So Winnipeg was good. I've also been to Nova Scotia several times. I knew another lizard out there that would pretty much cover me going there, or at least hit me with half. And
Yep.
Nova
Yep.
Scotia was very, very favorable as well. It's one of those cities in Canada where the first when slavery was abolished and you had the Underground Railroad, a lot of the blacks went from the
Yep.
south all the way up into and they situated themselves in Nova Scotia. But even in terms of interracial and so forth, it's very favorable in those places. So I do
Yep.
recommend people, at least if they're in Canada and they don't want to go to Europe or the Caribbean, at least give those places a shot. I don't think you'll be disappointed because I definitely wasn't. So,
Sure. Sure. I'm sorry. I'm going to cut you again. I'm sorry to do this because there's a game concept there that I think we've overlooked. And, the game concept I'm referring to is basically women sending you a ticket, right?
okay.
They send you a ticket, game recognized, right? I mean, a lot of guys I know, they try and act like they have more money than they actually do, and they try to impress women with money, right? But you've come, basically, I would assume, I don't know how you did it. It doesn't matter. But the point is, these girls sent you airplane tickets, excuse my French, to come visit them, right? And I mean, that's game recognized. And I think, I don't know, maybe later on you might want to elaborate on that, what you did or how you played it. But, a lot of guys don't have that mindset. And I think that's a mindset where I would assume you're telling these girls, if you want to see me, then, you have to send me a ticket, or, I'm not in a financial situation to come visit you. I'd love to visit you. But, I don't know too many guys that have experienced that sort of behavior. When I was younger, I did have a sugar mama for a short while, but I think she was. But anyways, I won't go into that. But perhaps you might want to elaborate. If not, I can understand. We can continue, or we can touch on that another time.
Yeah, I can quickly glance over it. Basically, if you spread your wings wide enough and you talk to people and you let some know your situation, some some women are in a good situation. They really just need a decent man. You know what I mean? And if they have to fly you in, they will do it because sometimes the the current market or the local market that the lizards are in are really
Wow.
whack. They're really
Wow.
whack. You know what I
Amazing.
mean? So
Amazing.
they're willing to actually fly. It's like if you want a product and you can't get it locally, but you already used that product before and you know what it's like, you're gonna pay for the shipping fees. You know what I mean? You're gonna pay for it, and that's what they do. Some of them don't mind doing it
Yeah.
because they've got everything except that companionship, and they do it and so forth. So that
But the
happened.
right companionship.
Yeah, because if it's not the right then it's really not companionship. You're
Yeah.
just there with someone who's just giving off all sorts of weird energy, whatever. But that's
Yeah.
just how it happened. I don't know if I have a strategy for always doing it, but
Yeah.
I met someone, they're not local, and I let them know, and they had the means to do it, and they did it, and
Yep.
that's pretty much how it went. I'd like to talk about a few other things as well. In terms of travel and so forth, going to these other countries, does complexion actually matter? Does it help to be dark skin versus light skin? I have my concepts on it from my personal observation, but I'd like to hear your views on it and see if it really matters or not really.
Okay. Well, I don't want to give this much airtime because to me, if we're discussing this, I think, what can I say? I mean, like, to me, it doesn't matter. I know firsthand, and Moma, you know the guy I'm talking about. He's from Senegal. Black as 3 a.m., as you would say, black as midnight, blue, black, whatever. But this guy's untouchable, as far as I'm concerned. Some of the women he's dealt with, he basically ventures all across Europe, dealing with blonde, blue-eyed girls, some dimes and stuff like that. He's tall, he's thin, but good-looking guy. But hey, he's black as midnight. And on the forum they put up two pictures. I guess a light-skinned guy and a black guy, both in a suit. And the question was, who would do better at game across the world? I mean, that's just such a stupid. It is just, and I have to say it, it's just a stupid question because you don't know. There's so many other factors. You don't know their personality. The light skinned guy could be boring. And I don't, I think
Or
certain,
vice versa.
or vice versa. The guy could have busted up teeth. He could, bad breath. He could shitty cologne. I mean, there's so many things apart from that. And I think what people fail to realize is black is black. And
Yes.
people, black is black at the end of the day, whether you're
Either,
dark skinned. Yeah,
yep.
go ahead, go ahead.
Either you are or you are not.
Exactly.
I personally feel that I think being really purple black can only help. Actually, I think it's favorable, but it's not a restriction in terms of if you're not purple black. Because I'm not purple black, but I have friends who are, and they've done very well, especially interracially.
Yep.
But what I think really matters, as you said, is how you carry yourself and
Yep.
have a good body. You may not be able to control your complexion, but as
Yeah.
sure as heck, you can control what your physique looks like. Hit the
Definitely.
gym.
Definitely.
Most of you guys that are listening are in developed countries, so food really shouldn't be a hindrance. Get your protein in, make your
Yeah.
food, hit the gym, do your push-ups, pull-ups, whatever you need to do, get your
Yeah.
body right, and budget yourself and update your wardrobe and update your smell as well.
Yep.
Get a nice aroma about you. Put some nice, well-fitting garments that accentuate your physique, and it can
Yeah.
only be positive. I've done that, and literally the IOIs, as they call them, are so blatant. All I've
Yeah.
had to do was collect.
Yep.
I don't have to open. I can just sit there and look, and someone will come the same way those two blondes from Switzerland
Yep.
open you with a bait line, which really you don't look like what they just
No.
they had to say something. They
Yeah.
really were like, I want to take you, but they had to play it off. So these people will start gaming you if your
Yep.
body is right. Doesn't matter if you're short or tall or something. If you got the
Yep.
right body, you wear the right garments, those things play such a huge role. Especially if you're dating interracially, don't worry about I'm light, I'm dark, nonsense. I've
Yeah.
seen it, and I'm a very good when it comes to observing things, it really doesn't play any part to that. So let's move on from that. I just want to touch
Yeah.
another thing. Some people have talked about blah blah blah. You go to certain places, they think you're African or you're American, or as opposed to being a Black American, it can be a limitation. What's your honest observations of that? Just before you interlude with that, I think a lot of times it's the Nigerians that get the bad rap. I'm just going to keep it honest. There's Nigerians on every corner of the earth, and they're either like it or hate it type of nation. So a lot of people would say, oh my gosh, those Nigerians, I hope you're not one, or blah, blah, blah. What's your take in terms of how you've moved and so forth? Do you feel that saying that you are or being mistaken from one has been an impediment or not?
Um. Well, I think part of the game is I don't. I'm not here to educate anybody. So, meaning in girls. So if girls think I'm this, then what's the terminology? Is it agree and amplify or whatever? So a lot of my travels, I guess people don't assume that I'm Canadian. They assume I'm American. So I've actually had people come up to me and said, "Oh, you're American. You're American." I go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. I was from," and they're like, "Where you from?" And I, "Yeah, New York, New York." And and then whatever for whatever reason they feel, then they can classify me. So if that helps, and then usually a conversation gets started from there. In the past, I would correct them and say, "No, I'm from Canada, Toronto," and then what would happen? Then the conversation would go dead. So as opposed to Nigerian and all that, I mean, listen, I've dated girls that have dated Nigerian guys. I've dated girls that have dated Ghanaian guys. So to me, it all comes down to the individual. I mean, you're Nigerian, obviously. We're good friends. I have friends that are Jamaicans. I have guys that are Jamaican and Nigerians that I don't like, but that's on a personal level. So when people say this, people say that, not all British people live in country estates. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not all Nigerians or Jamaicans live in ghettos. You know what I mean? So it's just stereotyping. So just because, and this is another thing too, just because a girl has had a bad experience with one guy from a certain country, whether it be Jamaica or Nigeria, that they tend to stereotype every guy from that country. And I know through a friend of mine who does a lot of online dating, he says a lot of girls right now in Toronto are saying that they don't want to date Jamaican and Nigerian men. So for whatever reason, maybe they're more alpha men, more aggressive, maybe for whatever character. But I mean, that's not the end of the world, is it really? Like we said earlier, there's other places, or there's, hey, I'm not Nigerian, I'm whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a factor sometimes. I date pretty almost exclusively black, and there's some black women that have had thoughts and so forth. So what I do blatantly, I tell them I'm not. Not that I won't tell them I'm not. I
Yeah.
won't bring it up. I'll just bring up the English, and then when I've hit that like 3, 4 times, they can see everything. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you're this and that. But once you give them that sweetness,
Yeah.
they're gonna change their mind accordingly and make excuses for themselves.
Sure.
So
Sure.
that's my strategy on it because I'm really out for the beats. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm not there to. The education will come afterwards. Once you give
Yeah.
them the good beats, the
Yeah.
education will come afterwards.
Yeah.
So I mean that would be it regarding that particular concept. But yeah, it can exist there, but it's up to you to manipulate their mindset accordingly because
Sure.
they're basing off of false premises.
Yeah.
Those two countries I mentioned specifically, Nigeria and Jamaica, have. I mean, Nigeria is the most populous black country in the world. There's 200 million people. So how can
Yeah.
you, if you haven't even met a million of them? So how can you make
Yeah.
judgment of that? Jamaica probably has I don't know how many millions outside of Jamaica.
Yeah.
I don't know. 50 million, who knows? There's tons of them. So again, you
Yeah.
can't make your judgment when you may not even have met a million, probably
True.
even met 50 of them. So
Yeah.
that's the concept there. Someone on the forum, shout out to them mans there, West Indian Archie, Jeriel, and Speakeasy, and so on and so forth come to mind. But Mentavious wanted to ask about experiences with black women where they grew up. I can mention experiences in 3 countries. I haven't dated in Nigeria as living in there as a Nigerian, so I can't. I've dated Nigerians outside of Nigeria in pretty much, well, almost 3 of the countries that I've lived in besides Nigeria. So, what's your input on that? What's your experiences in dating black, or is that a forte, not really a forte of yours per se?
I think you might have more to add to this topic than I do, but I have dated black women. Probably maybe 20% of the women I've dated have been, black. I'm talking actually right now to a lady from the Caribbean who's black. And actually, I'll say it's quite refreshing because um, just dealing with her, she's got a very good personality, very easygoing. I think a while ago, or sorry, last week, she was in a bad mood and she actually came back and apologized. I just basically stayed clear of her, and then she, sent me a text about apologizing for the mood she was. So I mean, she very nice to deal with. So um, I actually dated one Nigerian girl, and it was funny. She made a comment to me one time about she was also pleasant. I mean, educated, very. Let me see. She was very career driven, not in a bad way. And then she made a comment to me one time about, am I, if she's woman enough for me, which I found kind of funny. No one's ever said that to me. And let me see. In terms of Black American, I never. You know what? I don't even have the Black American flag. I don't even have that. I've dated black girls in Canada, but it's been good and bad. And um, I think, and in the UK, yeah, I dated a girl in the UK, a black English girl, but I find they're more easier to deal with than North American women. So my experiences have been pretty positive. And again, I don't generalize all black women. They come in different shapes and sizes, and dare I say, they come in different complexions as well, right? But yeah, I'll turn that over to you. I think you have more experience in that
Yeah,
part.
I'm hard headed when it comes to that. Like that's my preference, and maybe it's the fact that I grew up in England, and
Yeah,
to be honest, I don't think the white lizards in England are the best looking in the world. So that made my preference pretty easy, to be honest. When I did go into Europe, and I have a friend that partially grew up in Russia, a black guy from one country in South Africa. I can't remember which country it is. Maybe Angola. I don't know. I can't remember. But he would show pictures of his girlfriend, and he didn't really have the game per se. But the girlfriends were pretty looking white women. So I was like, wow, if that's how they look like, it would make my preference difficult. But it was not difficult. Me in England. So London black women. London, Britain obviously was a former colonialist country, so the blacks from there will be from either their colonial countries in West Africa, some from East Africa like Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and they're going to be either from there or West Africa, any country where English is a dominant European language, such as Nigeria, Ghana, um, those are the ones that come up to mind, or the West Indian, where they shipped some of their blacks to, such as Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, etc. So women from there will have the British covering, but they'll have those underlying core values. My experiences with that were good, man. I mean, I'm a London guy, so it really was very natural to me. It was easy. You talk to them. Some liked me, some didn't, but there's so many people that I really didn't have a lot of problem. And what their expectations were not as ridiculous as North America. So you didn't have to posture as hard to get a black woman or any other type of woman there. You just,
yeah, and sorry, that is a big difference between dating in London and dating in Toronto. The I find the expectations a lot lower um, in terms of what women will accept, as opposed to Canada, where there's, I guess, what do they call it, the checklist, right?
yeah, there's this checklist, and I realized that coming to Toronto because when I moved to Toronto, my the same mindset I had in London was I was getting messed up because I'm a pretty honest type of guy. I let you know I feel that what I have is good enough. I'm in shape. I've got athletic physique. I'm intelligent, I'm witty, and that's it. You know what I mean? I mean, what more are you looking for? You're an independent person. You shouldn't really look for anything else. So me thinking this and me having success in London, pretty much just road game in London. I chat to girls. If it's carnival time, Notting Hill Gate, go out, chat to girls, get some, etc., etc. You go to Marks and Spencer, you go to Tesco's, you see a girl, you like her, you chat to her, she might be behind the register. What you saying? Let me get you. It was pretty much like that. There was no opening sets, closing set, none of that. So
Yeah.
I thought that okay, Toronto, same thing. Come there, opening, sinking. I didn't know what was going on. So what I realized is that Toronto especially had their expectations were very much inflated. They want you to have this, they want you to have that. So you got to be more conniving, you've got to posture more. And I've never been a fan of that. I just don't enjoy doing that. So that was the experiences in terms of that. But the same elements that exist in Toronto actually exist in London. You've got the black people will consist largely of people of West Indian parentage. And for the Americans that don't know West Indian, that's really a British way, I guess, of saying people that are from the Caribbean. So it's not people from the west part of India, New Delhi, or whatever. It's actually the Caribbean. So I'm just clearing that up quickly because people will be like, okay, the Indian flag. No. So West Indian consists of the Caribbean. That's what a British term of calling a Caribbean person
Yes.
is. So you got women from there, and you got women from Africa. So that would be the components. Toronto, it was more of a raw component. So a lot of people I would speak to had actually moved from these countries at maybe a young age or in their teens. So a lot of them still had very much of their home country. Whereas in London, they were British. They might be first or second generation. So even though their parents are from there, they behave nothing like that. They behave like Londoners, just of a different complexion. Whereas Toronto, they'd be in different groups. So if I'm talking to someone who's from Trinidad, it's like almost like talking to a real Trini, as opposed to talking to a Canadian black that has Trini parents. So those were the differences that I found and kind of struggled a little bit with. I had to adjust my mindset and so on and so forth. So that would be my experience there. Me being now in America, again, like in the black. I'm not in an area that has a lot of West Indians. It's more Black Americans, so I've dated them a lot. Um, I find them they like my style because I'm British, so I'm different. So they might see a black person and a local black American, and they may have a certain mindset, but I dissolve their mindset because I think different, I talk different. A lot of times there I've been on dates and the lizard's laughing and I'm like, what you laughing at? She's like, I can't understand what you're saying. You know what I mean? So yeah, they actually tell you that. So that's been like that for me, and they're they're easier for me in America. They've been easier. It's been pretty much like, oh wow, naked already. So that's pretty much how it's worked. They're definitely more freakier. I
Yeah.
think their freak level, in my experience, is actually on par with, some might say, a lot of people often say that white women are very freaking, which is a reason that a lot like to date white women because they can take it up a higher notch in terms of sexuality. But I find the black lizards here are quite freaky. I'm not that freaky per se, but they actually ask for more, choking, anal, all that madness,
Oh
pretty
wow.
pretty early too. I'm not talking
Oh wow.
about down the line. We're talking like first link, and it's like I'm like, rare, okay. So that's been enjoying for me, and if I contrast those are my experiences. But yeah, definitely. The fact that I'm British and I've got a British accent, I've got the exotic value, and it works very well for me here in America. It didn't work that well in Toronto, but it worked very well for me here in America. So that would be that regarding. So let's kind of move along and go on to, I guess, a conclusive point. A West Indian Archie posted a question, or he posed a question, which Rude Boy relayed to me, and he mentioned what game has in store for a player, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes. So yes, do you want me to lead off with that, or do you care to
Yeah,
say? Oh,
you lead on that one.
okay. I thought about it, and I think the ugly part of the game is that the game, once you realize game, you realize that game never sleeps, meaning you can no longer shut it off. Some people think, okay, game, you gotta go out, blah, blah, blah. But once you get your long term relationship, once you get your wife, and I do look towards marriage at some point. I don't foresee myself doing this forever. A lot of people are scared of marriage, especially in North America, because the return on the investment of marriage is definitely not favorable in North America. You don't see. It seems that there's no repercussions for lizards acting out of line, but from the culture that I'm from, it's taboo to mess around like that. So it definitely looks like it's a favorable thing. So ugliness means that even if you're married, even if you're in a long-term relationship, you still have to employ the same game strategies, or the woman's gonna disrespect you. She's not gonna fulfill her end of the bargain, and that's gonna cause your relationship to break down. And if you don't have game, you're not aware of the games that will continue to be played even once you're out of the playing field, if one wants to call it that. So that's the ugly of game. The that it never ends. The good of it is that I think it gives you more control. It allows you to select the best choice. A lot of people I find in relationships, they settle without really having had the opportunity to choose what they want. If you look at the type of partner or spouse that they've picked, you wonder to yourself, and if you ask them, was that the best that you really could have gotten? You know what I mean? And they just got it because that's really all they could have gotten. And they'll make excuses to say that's why they got that. But game gives you a little bit more control. It gives you a little more feel that you can actually fine tune. You can vet out. You can look at certain things, certain concepts, and rule out people that are only down the line gonna waste your time and disrespect the relationship that you've got with them. So that's what I would look at in terms of game, and it makes you fluent to bullshit. Immersion in any language in any country where there's an agreed language allows you to acquire fluency as quickly as possible. So especially being in North America where bullshit is very fluid. You listening to bullshit for a while, you get you get an understanding of when someone is talking shit, and then you can decide to rule that person out of your circle. So you understanding that, you can vet your lizards early. If you're dealing with one, you're like, okay, this is someone I think I want to take it further with. And through the interaction, you hear things that are not congruous with what you expect. You can just charge them to the game, or let them go. And the fact that you've got game, you don't have that fear that, oh, you know what, I'll never get another good woman or something like that. There's tons of them out there. So that would be the good that game has in store for a player. Over to you, Rude Boy.
Yeah, great points, and I really can't uh, add or detract from what you said. I think for me, game, one of the things I like about the forum, and my favorite section is the travel section. I always read the reports, and I'm always surprised. For example, recently there was a lot of information about Budapest, Hungary. I've been there a few times, having dated someone who was from there. So, good city, but I guess in terms of what I'm trying to say is that there seem to be a lot of guys that are either living there or passing through there or spending a couple of months there. And I think I get PMs from guys that are in that vicinity, in that region, and these are black guys as well that are spending months at a time. So I think, because of the culture in North America, a lot of guys are just improving themselves, online businesses, and they're just not really settling, right? You can either settle for bullshit or you can choose to do something about it. And a lot of guys are, the future of game, I guess, is going to places that are more favorable. Why stay in a climate which is toxic, which you have to do backflips and you have to date women that are 35 with kids and, divorcee and again, I call them toxic, tarnished women. I think the future is you'll see a lot of guys, go into these places. Part of the reason I like to travel, I like to go to places where I don't see, people that I know or people from my home country. That's why I'll never go to an all-inclusive resort in the Caribbean or Mexico because I don't want to meet, Jim and Bob or Jim and Sally from Ottawa or Toronto. I like to escape. A holiday for me is to escape. But back on the subject, I guess the good, I guess, you improve yourself. You asked me earlier about languages. I know a bit of French, English, my first language. I've toyed with the idea of maybe Russian or Spanish, and these are the things. This is the future, right? This is These are the things we have to do. You mentioned the gym. I still am. I'm in my 40s, but the gym is very, is an essence of my life, and we're just trying to be well rounded. And I guess the ugly, unfortunately, we're in Canada or America where women aren't they're not feminine, and we have feminist movements and all this kind of stuff. And you know what? I hear this term SJW. I have to laugh because I don't even know what that means. I don't read those articles. I
Yeah,
don't.
what does that mean? I
I
can't be bothered to Google them. Let me quickly open up Google because there's all these,
terms.
yeah, or SIW secret.
Yeah,
Oh no, SIF secret internet fatty, and it
yeah.
it makes me chuckle. I try not to get onto them too much. I'm just gonna throw up. Okay,
Yes.
I just googled it. It says social justice warrior.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's one of these that are like, women are supposed to, they can do what they want, blah, blah, blah. And,
So
and it's just, yeah, those terms there. But yeah, you covered, some interesting things there that you mentioned, especially regarding game. And what was what was the term that you mentioned? You mentioned something that I found. Yes, going to a different climate and so forth. I relate game and dating, relationships, finding the right one. I really compare it to jobs. If you look at back in the days, most of us as black, especially black people, black males
yeah.
from former British colonies, our parents were not born in the West. Well,
No.
mine weren't. So they sought to go elsewhere where the climate was more favorable to a certain standard of limit, a certain standard of living, where economics were better. You could get certain jobs that would, enable you to better yourself in life.
Sure.
So my concept with that also goes to the same with relationships. You can't, if you're in a place where the relationships suck. We now live in a global marketplace.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
you can find out a lot about a place. I joined the forum really because I did my first trip to a country that I didn't know the language and I was going on my own. I don't mind if I know, but I don't know I don't know. I couldn't say a sentence in Spanish.
Yeah.
So I joined the forum to get information on that. So the point I'm making is that we live in an era, we live in an inter information society now. We live in an inter
Sure.
information marketplace. So you can find information, research places, and you can travel to these places. You're not limited to dating the nonsense
Yeah.
around where you're at. You're a man.
Yeah.
Move around. See if it works out with you. And especially if you don't have a family, uproot. A lot of people work remotely. So just,
Right.
do the transition. And those are something that you mentioned that I thought is a very valid point. And yeah, I don't like resorts either. I don't want to see someone that I saw back home. I don't want
Yeah.
that comfort. I want to learn something new. You ain't teaching me nothing from the resort, that safety bubble. So, no, I totally agree with what you say in regards to that.
Yeah. And once again, this is more targeted at Black Americans or even Black Canadians. I mean, I have friends. I have a few guys that I, talk to, younger guys, try and give them advice. I guess you could call it a mentorship. And the first thing I tell them, forget the flashy car, forget the iPad or the MacBook Pro and all that BS. Forget having the latest clothing from Under Armour. You don't need 10 Air Jordans. Take some of that money and travel. Go beyond the Caribbean and Mexico or America or wherever. I mean, that we had one of my jobs, some of the guys got to go to an office, one of the offices we had in Costa Rica. And when these guys came back, I mean, it was like they had seen aliens. I mean, they were giggling, I mean, the woman there, and, they're very feminine and sexy and affectionate. And, some of them had opportunities to escalate with them, but because of the work situation, they declined. But I mean, that's them. I wasn't on that trip. But again, this is Costa Rica, and there's Panama, and we can spend all day naming these countries. But like I said, I've been to countries that aren't necessarily the popular ones. I've been to France and Holland and all that, but Croatia not on everybody's radar. Hungary, Romania is on my radar. Serbia is on my radar. I mean, these are countries that they have women that are attractive to most guys, I would
Yeah,
say.
they're on it. Like
Yeah,
just to elaborate on what you said, um, or some people in the forum like to say, I know a black American guy that's killing it in Serbia, killing it.
oh no,
Like,
you can't say
yeah,
that, Mo. You can't say that.
killing it. I'm saying it because I know most guys ain't even gonna travel anyway, and he's a black
Yeah,
guy, and I know this because I see the videos and the
yeah,
pictures. So
yeah,
it's not like hearsay. I'm like, okay, this guy has made sure that the evidence is there. You see,
yeah, yeah,
in and out. So
yeah.
pretty much, yeah.
Is he light skinned?
Nope. Nope. There's no angles in the complexion. He's killing it, and there's another guy he rolls with, and it's all good. It's all good around the clock.
Yeah, you show me the pictures. I know what you're talking about. So it's
Yep.
verified. So you know what I mean. So definitely.
Yeah, so yeah, let's I think that will conclude this show. Again, it's our first pretty much. So, if any people have any questions, you can always post it to us. Rude Boy, what would be the best venue for them to see? I'm gonna put this recording up onto the YouTube channel, and then I'll put the link on the website on the forum actually.
Okay.
But
Yeah, they know how to reach us. I don't know if you want to drop your email or anything like that, but just want to say, Travel Kai, you will be up next, my friend, and you'll be in the spotlight. Want to hear about China and your Asian experience. I want to hear more about yourself. You're a man of many facets, and yeah, we'll be in touch, and we'll hope to hook this up sometime soon.
Yeah, and just to conclude, non-black members can also chime in. You can ask questions or send, questions and so forth that you think, or areas that you're uncertain about. I can answer those. Obviously, I can't answer them from a. If you're asking me where can a white guy kill it with black women, I may not be the best person to answer that question, but I'm sure I could find someone that could provide you with a
Sure.
more complete answer. But yeah, all are welcome. All are welcome to post questions and so forth. So yeah, you can either hit up Rude Boy, yeah, PM, or just put it on the thread, and that'll be that. So, if that is all, it's been a great pleasure learning from a wise man such as yourself, Rude Boy. And
Same likewise. Same likewise.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm out. Rude
okay,
boy out.
all right, moment out. Peace.
Peace.